This is Grape Video 24, Layering, a pruning technique for replacing or renewing grapevines. What do we mean by layering? Well, we're going to show you, and it's an exciting tool for the person pruning grapevines. Here we go. Here we have a schematic of a grapevine trained umbrella niffin, and we have outlined in red a cane that was taken from that vine as it was pruned. And look what we did with that. We took that cane and we bent it down. We dug a hole in the ground 12 to 15 inches deep, and we bent the cane down into the ground, around and back up again. Why did we do that? We did that to create a new grapevine where that cane comes out of the ground. Let's explain further. When we do the burying of a cane like this, it turns out that the hormones produced in the leaves of the vine flow by gravity, as the arrows show, down from the plant, down that cane, down to the bottom of the hole where we dug and buried that cane. And on the other side of the cane, the same thing happens. So we get more auxin hormones flowing down from the outer portion of that cane down into that U-shaped part of the cane in the ground. Well, these hormones are responsible in part for rooting development. So what happens? These hormones flow by gravity. And when they do that, they concentrate down in the hole in the ground where that cane is. And we'll make a red blotch like this to indicate that. So this is a powerful way to utilize the physiology of the grapevine to create a rooting phenomenon on this cane that we looped into and out of the ground. Well, when that happens, yes indeed, we have lots of roots forming down on the section of cane that is buried in the soil. We're going to look at this more closely. It all starts with pruning during the dormant period. And here we show an example of a layer cane that was pruned out on the end of a piece of cordon during the dormant period. And one technique for marking these is to use flagging tape, as shown here, to tie that cane on the trellis so it whips up above the top of the trellis and can be easily seen. Because we'll prune out that long cane during the dormant pruning period, but we won't go and bury it in the soil until spring, when things have warmed up and it's easy to bury the cane. So this is a good way to keep it safe from getting run over by equipment, and by doing this you'll be able to see where these layer canes are located. So if you're going to use the technique of using layer canes, you'll want to carry with you a roll of flagging tape to tie them up just like this right after you've pruned that layer cane. And this layer cane is being used to replace a vacant space where there's a missing vine adjacent to this vine. Notice that there's no cordon on the wire where that layer cane is located because there is no vine there. For whatever reason, it's missing, and we're going to create a new vine with this layer cane. Okay, here's a close-up showing how we might bury that cane in the soil. We just bent it. The mother vine, if you will, is to our right. The cane has been looped down into the soil. You want to put it down at least 12 inches. You don't need to put it any deeper than that either, but 12 inches or so. Don't just bury it 6 inches. That will not be adequate. So bury it and then bring the end of that cane back up out of the soil like this. When you've done that, you're going to want to mark that layer cane so that you don't come along and accidentally cut it loose from the mother vine, because you're going to want to leave that layer cane attached to the mother vine for quite a long while, a matter of years sometimes. Don't cut it off at the end of one growing season. Leave it at least a couple of years or more. Don't be in a rush to sever the layer cane from the mother vine. And so by marking it with flagging tape, it will be a warning to you when you come through working on the vines to take special care of this particular layer cane. Okay, let's look at a schematic and a few more details about using layers to fill in missing vine spaces. Well, first, you might want to prune the mother vine more severely than usual and reduce the crop level so that you promote more early growth of this layer cane that you've put in. Don't try to fully crop that mother vine and create the layer at the same time. You might just reduce it by 10 or 15 buds and force more growth into this new vine that you're creating. The second thing is, if you're going to replace a vine space next to the mother vine, you want that cane to come back out of the ground so that it's in line with the vines within its row, and you're going to look across the rows so that you bring that cane up out of the ground so it's in line with vines in rows adjacent to the rows you're working on. And as we already said, it's good to mark those parts of the layer cane with flagging tape so that you do not mistake those for anything else and do not accidentally prune those away in the next year or two. At times you're going to want to, after growth has begun, remove all the shoots of the layer cane as it's going down to the ground, and you may want to remove some of the shoots on the layer cane after it comes out of the ground if you're trying to force growth up higher on the cane to produce really strong canes to establish, say, a new cordon area. So that will be somewhat optional, but I'd always remove them in that section on the right side where you have the layer cane going from the mother vine down to the ground. And then as the shoots grow on the layer cane in the first year, take the fruit off. The purpose of all this growth is not to produce a crop. No, the purpose this year should be concentrated on growing the new vine from this layer cane. So take the fruit off if it develops on any part of the layer cane. Well, here is the same type of schematic, only instead of coming off of the cordon on top, we've taken a long cane near the ground, near the base of the vine, and that's really more ideal if you can find a cane that's long enough to work in this way. Here's a picture of that. See, we have a cane that originates right at the base of that mother vine in the upper right hand corner. And to protect that cane so it's not just running along the ground and will be run over or mowed over, we've bent it over that wire, back down into the hole that we've already dug, and back out again. And if you can get a cane low on the vine just like this, that's ideal. Well, here is a situation that we had with the mother vine on the right, and by the way, this variety is the Cornell Red Hybrid variety Noré. And we took a cane near the base of the vine and we bent it over the lower wire and back out of the ground. We marked it with flagging tape, and if we mark where that layer is at the end of the first growing season, that was the original layer cane that we just marked in magenta. And after one season's growth, we have some nice strong canes that grew from that layer cane, and they're roughly those that are within that yellow circle. So that's a good start. Now that layer cane was planted in April 13, 2011, and this picture was taken on January 11th, about 9 months later in midwinter. So there we have the results of planting a layer 9 months after we did the task. Well, we just went out a few days ago and checked to see what that vine looked like, because it's in a part of a vineyard we don't utilize very much. And here we are 3 years after we planted that cane, and this is the same vine. The picture is taken October 24, 2014. So this is about 3.5 years after we created the original layer cane, and there it is, just like we saw in previous pictures. And that's a good thing to do, to leave the layer cane attached to the mother vine for 2 to 3 years. Don't be in a rush. All the growth to the left of the posts that we've now outlined with a yellow rectangle is all part of the new vine. We could have probably severed that layer a year ago or so. It's plenty strong, but we didn't get around to it. So we will, during this next winter period, take that layer cane off the mother vine, and now the new vine is really able to function fully on its own. Okay, here's a video of that vine so you can see the details of it more carefully. There's the old 3.5-year-old layer cane going down into the ground, and we're going to brush aside some of the leaves at the base of the vine here so you can see how fully developed this vine is. There's some Noray grapes. Actually, we haven't managed this vine very carefully. There's lots of things that could be cut out here. But I'm trying to illustrate how large and how nice this vine has developed. There we have some cordon developed at the top of this new vine. All of it begun 3.5 years ago with a layer cane. Well, now we're going to talk about a different situation and a different application for using a layer cane. To start out with, let's talk about this Cab Sauvignon vine, and we're going to point out where we made a layer. There. Outlined in red was the layer cane that we put down, bent it down into the ground. We've now excavated a way to expose the roots from that layer. But that was what we did. What we could have done is this. We could have, instead of looping it out in the middle of the vine space, we could have looped that cane around and back up right by the trunk and have the vine renew itself. Why? Because this big old trunk does not throw suckers. It does not allow us to create a young, healthy vine with a young, healthy trunk from suckers that develop near the base of the vine. This is a time when I should say that we are in the process right now of experimenting with new chemistries of insecticides that may be able to control root phylloxera. Wouldn't that be exciting if we actually could do that? That would mean a revolution in the growing of vinifera grapes. We would no longer have to use rootstocks to prevent phylloxeration on the roots. So now we could use own-rooted vinifera as long as we manage them with a spray program to control phylloxeration, a root louse insect, if you will, on the roots. So I say that in passing. We're going to have more on that in other videos coming up. But if you have a vine that is own-rooted to start with and you want to whip layer around like this back up against itself, that's fine. And you can create a young, healthy vine from the vine itself within its own vine space. I don't prefer to do this because it's a little hard to create the excavation right next to the big old root and the big old trunk. I would just as soon renovate vines by moving them all over a half a vine space. And if we take this out, what we did here was to put that layer cane down and bring it up in the middle of the vine space between this vine and the next vine. And if we do that for the entire row, everything will be offset by a half a vine space. And I prefer to do that. That's a lot easier to do, but that's a matter of choice. But the point is, you can use layering to renovate vines themselves if you're in a situation where you can utilize own-rooted vines. This layer cane was put in the ground on May 23rd, 2014, and we took this picture on September 19th, 2014. So we're about to show you the details of the root development of this layer cane after 4 months in the ground. Here we go. Look at that. There's a close-up. And all of the roots in this picture developed over that 4-month period. I think that's amazing. Here is a video clip following that layer cane as it comes down from the mother vine. I'm not the best video photographer, so bear with me. And we're getting into the subterranean area. Can you see behind all the roots that loop that was the layer cane? Yeah. And then if we back out a little and start to go up that cane on the other side, now we start to see the leaf area. We suspect this may have a virus problem, by the way, this particular vine, so that's another story. But all of the leaf area here that you're seeing is on the new layer cane as it comes up out of the ground. There you have it. Isn't that amazing? Yes. Now we tagged on and we're actually lifting the entire root system from that layer. Look at how much. We just couldn't get over what happened in a 4-month period with the amount of rooting. And we're going to show that to you one more time. Here we go. There. Now I'm trying to put the camera right down underground, if you will, to show. I think as we pan around here, you'll get the idea that these roots developed not only well, but they were up to 30 to 36 inches in all directions from where we put that layer cane. There you go. That's a better shot of it to show how dispersed that layer cane had developed roots in just a 4-month period. A very powerful tool, layering, to create a new vine either in an adjacent vine space or in the same vine space as the vine that you're working with. So in summary, when pruning grapevines, be mindful that a layer cane may be used to create an own-rooted vine in an adjacent empty vine space, or to rejuvenate the vine you are pruning by using a whip layer. So you'll add layering or using a layer cane to your bag of tricks or your bag of tools for pruning grapevines. And whenever it makes sense, do by all means consider using layer canes to keep your vineyard young and healthy. Well, thank you for your attention. Until the next video, we'll say happy grape growing.